It's Monday, November 22nd, and this is the iPhoneography podcast. Hey, everyone. This is episode 50, the big 50 of the iPhoneography podcast. And that's including back in the days when we had the Artful iPhoneography interviews. And but still, that's not a bad milestone. And, just glad to be able to be here this long. And to come along with the ride with me is my good friend and co-host, Dave Podner. Hi, Dave.
Greg, congratulations on 50.
Oh, thanks.
Always going for those nice round numbers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're just waiting for the time we can add another zero to that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to celebrate. And this is something that's a U.S. joke. So we're going to celebrate with the luau and go surfing with the big 50.
Oh, yeah. I got you. Yep. We hit the big 50 and that's something, I guess, because I've seen other podcasts that come and go, and I mean, we're nowhere near Tiny Shutter yet, so we got a long way to go yet, but we'll just keep plugging away. So today we are going to talk about I guess what we could say is how it started and how it's going. And what we're talking about here is our approach to editing. So editing has changed, I think, over the years. It's definitely not now, at least for me, and I don't think you either, Dave. It's not what it is now, like what it was when we first, when Instagram just exploded onto the scene. So we're going to just talk a little bit about that and look at some pictures and whatnot. And so we'll let you start, Dave. You sent me some pictures, and I'll share my screen here and bring them up. And, you can just kind of tell the folks, and if you're on the audio, don't worry. You'll be able to see these in your podcast app because I'm putting out these shows are going out as an enhanced podcast now. So if you look at your phone screen, you'll be able to see the pictures that we're talking about. Let me share my screen here.
Okay.
Wait, I better do this first. 50 episodes in, you'd think we'd have this figured out by now.
Oh, yeah, sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on one second.
Okay, well,
and I'm not even going to edit this out.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, let me do an introduction here. The early pictures here are from 2015, so we're looking around 6+ years ago, and they were taken on a 6. I'm trying to remember, was a 6? Yeah, 6S Plus. So this is one of the early big phones Apple had with 2 lenses on it.
Right.
To put it in perspective.
Yeah. So that's going back. What did you say? 3 phones ago for you?
About 2
phones ago.
Yeah. So, but I mean, it still took good images. That's the thing that a lot of people forget is that yes, the newer ones can do. There are certain things that the new one can do that the old ones can't do. There's literally no way I could get night photos with even my 10, let alone the 6S. They're just without physical possibility.
It was possible, but you needed to take the old-fashioned approach to it. You needed a tripod or someplace to set your phone. You needed an app like Camera Plus. It had a fantastic long exposure feature in it, and things like that. But now, with starting at the night mode, started with the 11 series, but it got better with the 12 and even better with the 13s.
Yeah.
But you can do it handheld for up to 10 seconds handheld and then 30 seconds on a tripod. And I mean, we're getting Milky Way shots. I mean, stuff like that just wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So
that's mind blowing.
So, but with regard to editing, I mean, it's changed so much over the years too. And so we're going to go with this one first.
Yep. Now,
I thought this was pretty interesting.
Oh, yeah. This was a photo I took the the next town over, Oakmont, has train tracks that run through the middle of it. And this is something I only learned after living here for like around here for 3 or 4 years. They're active, but they're, of course, that we don't have passenger rail. They're all freight rail, and they run at night. So generally they run like after 10 overnight, just so they don't have to worry about traffic. So I thought they were just, because there's a walking trail literally right next, just like 10 feet away from the railroad tracks. I'm thinking, who would put a walking trail right next to a walking railroad? Well, if they do it overnight, no one's going to be on the walking trail generally, so it's safe. Sorry about that. So this was right after snow, obviously. And I just kind of crouched down, and this, I forget which app this was, to be honest, just because it's been so long, but this had the ability to do focus control.
Okay.
Where the center of the track I kept in focus and the outside I made blurry. So, and it wasn't Focus. It was actually an app before Focus that I had.
Was it Ta-Da?
No, I know it definitely wasn't that. But like I said, I don't think, unfortunately, a lot of these apps, when the phone went to 64-bit, they're no longer, they stopped developing for them.
Yeah. So, and that's sad.
So, and that's one thing. Early on, there was a lot more experimentation with what a lot of the editing apps could do, just because it wasn't mature. It was like, hey, this is the first time that you have enough power, even though now it's nothing compared to the new one, but you still had enough power. You could do some editing on the phone, where, like I said, focus here, or you could do, and I didn't give an example here, but like color select, where it's like, I only want yellows to show when I have flowers and everything else being black and white. And then, of course, everyone went crazy with it. So it was like, no one used it, everyone used it, and then no one used it again because they all got overwhelmed by it.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, you can see like right here, early on, I was like, at least in my mind, it's like, I want to really pop the photo. So I overdid a lot of my editing compared to what I do now. Now, occasionally, every so often now, I'll overdo a photo either on purpose, as like, okay, it's, I want to give a really expressive, almost artistic look to it. Or sometimes it's like, hey, this sunset or this, I really want these colors to over pop. But that's kind of personal preference on my end. Because I know some people go for 100% natural color, it depends on what you go for. But you can see for this one, I really made sure that the outsides were exceptionally blurry and the middle was really, really sharp. So there was no trying to do a...
There was no, you weren't going for any kind of a realistic effect or anything. You were definitely just going for a flat out edit that, it was an artistic approach for sure.
Right. And a lot of that was the fact that, like I said, the megapixels and the zoom and the light gathering ability wasn't there like it is now. And dynamic range. So you went with a little bit more editing. And, if you're someone who's been working with iPhones for a while, more than 5 years or so, you remember what, like you said, especially when Instagram first came on over 10 years ago, the Instagram filters were famous because the running joke was, you have this high-powered device and you're making photos that look like something out of the mid-1970s. Yeah. Because so many of those filters were just kind of, they wanted to make it look like faded photos. And that's why, even though Instagram no longer wants to talk about photos, originally, the icon for Instagram was a kind of a faux Polaroid camera.
That's right.
The Insta one. So they wanted to, that's what they were focusing on. That's what a lot of us were working on. If you go to the next one, and this was more, it was a little bit more later in the year, obviously, everything green there. And, it was me, and I believe that's the moon on the upper, the moon on the upper right there.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like I said, limitation of the camera versus what you can do now. But also, this is again me really trying to emphasize the colors that were in the sky. You can see the clouds almost have a
Yeah.
pastel look to it, where I'm
Yeah.
sure it was when you, of course, with your eyes, more dynamic range in your eye than the camera. It popped, but when I looked at the photo on the screen, it was like, oh, this isn't popping like I was expecting it to. So I'll do, at this point, I may even thrown it in Snapseed and did an HDR,
Oh yeah.
trying to just make those colors extra pop.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, it's trying to a little bit compensate for the camera, trying to get the camera to not necessarily match what actually I saw, but to match the feeling I got when I saw the scene.
Yeah. 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 That's interesting because you could tell
Yeah.
it's in the evening, obviously, because the moon's up and the
Mm-hmm.
sun is setting because the sky is glowing orange
Yeah.
and pink and whatnot. And the street, there's a street light on even. But you did a good job of, in my opinion, getting the detail out of the foreground here where all the
Yeah.
cars and on the street night. I mean, you can still see what's going on. It's not like everything was
Right.
swallowed up in darkness.
Right. And you know what?
So that's cool.
Let me, real quick, I'm going to actually, because I have the original photos. Yeah, that was in May. Actually, I'm incorrect. I'm incorrect. I do apologize. That is the moon. That's a morning
Mm-hmm.
shot.
Oh, okay.
That's a morning
Well,
shot.
same difference. So
Yeah,
really, like
yeah,
it's
yeah. So instead of the sun would be to your left of the image instead of to the right.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
this was taken around 6 in the morning in May.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So
Okay.
again, just try and get that kind of pastel-y pop to it. But again, would I do this now? I may not try to go for as much overdriven, in terms of the edit. I wouldn't go for as much overdriven over color saturation
Mm-hmm.
that I did back then.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to point out here is
Yeah.
is how things were for us back then, our approach to it back then
Mm-hmm.
compared to what we do nowadays. And as we go through these, we'll see, some of the differences in your approach here.
Yeah.
So we go to this one. This one
To,
is
to be
much
honest,
more detailed.
yeah, honestly, this was in June, around a little past midday. And
So June of this year?
no, June. This is June 2015 still.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, yeah. So this is still the 6 Plus, but really, you can tell the light is just perfect here.
Yeah.
It's partly
so
cloudy.
for our listeners, if our listeners can't see the enhanced podcast on their device, just let them know what we're looking at here.
Sure. You're seeing a lake scene, really lush greenery, trees completely full, partly cloudy sky with a nice blue image behind it. And again, in terms of the lighting, it's not direct sun, but it's lit enough and there's enough clouds where the light's diffused. So you don't have that harsh sun coming down, but it's light enough that the camera's not struggling for anything. And
that's cool.
Again, and honestly, this one, again, and I'll say this, when you're looking at it, depends on the screen you're looking at. Because I'm looking at it on the laptop screen I have, which is not the greatest screen in the world, versus looking at it on my iPhone screen. The laptop screen actually looks not overblown and just a tidge grainy, where I look at it on the phone here, just because the display on the phone's a lot better. The greens are almost fluorescent on my screen, because they're kind of, it isn't a natural green, it's green.
Yeah.
So
it's nicely saturated.
Yeah. So it's a little more saturated there. And I forget exactly which park this was in, to be honest. It is a local park. Fortunately, I don't have the location data on. I was looking for that also. But this is just again, it was just really nice. And like I said, looking at the image on the phone, if I would do this again, I just wouldn't overdrive. I would kick the vibrance down. Maybe not the saturation, the vibrance down a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll get into my thoughts on vibrance and
Yeah.
stuff when I get to my photos. But yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, it really pops, and it
Yeah.
actually, I think it really looks good the way it is. Um, it was a 6S,
Yeah.
or was it 6S or 6 Plus?
Plus
Okay.
6S plus
Um,
6S plus 6S
Okay.
plus.
And
Yeah.
so the 6S series, the 6S and the 6S Plus were the first ones that had that deep trans isolation, they called it,
Mm-hmm.
for the pixels where the color wouldn't bleed into the next pixel.
Right.
And I always found that it gave a really nice, sharp, crisp image.
Oh yeah.
And I'm looking this pretty much full screen on my iMac here, that it's like a 4.5K screen or whatever it is. I'm not sure what the resolution is, but it's a lot. And it looks really good. There's no
Yeah.
it's not pixelated or anything else. So
Right.
that's pretty good. It's a good shot.
Oh, thank you.
So now the next one. Now this is how this one came in, Dave.
Okay.
It was pretty small, so I don't know if you
Right.
if you have a bigger one you can send me for when I upload it.
I don't think I do, unfortunately.
Okay, no,
I
that's
don't
fine.
think I
That's
do.
fine.
Yeah.
It
So
should still look good on the enhanced.
sorry. Yeah. So this is a morning shot. And this was actually, I think I know where this was near our work. And this is again me trying to get more the feeling where you can see the sunrise there and the sky are extra red and extra punchy. And to the point of the snow's blue here. And which, we all know that snow is a really hard thing to take a photo of that's really good. Just because getting the white balance right.
We all, except for people like Joseph Ferreira, who never sees snow, and
that's
he
true.
always
Yes,
is sure to let us know about it.
Or
Anyway.
I would say, or my dad.
Yeah.
As he says, "Oh yeah, I see the snow way out there on the mountaintop, way, way, way over there." Yes. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah.
But again, this just a difference of if I had this photo again and this image, which I may have this photo and image coming up in a few months.
I could do it today.
Getting that, yeah, exactly. I may work on it where, it's not a bad image. Again, I'm not downplaying these images, but I probably try to make it where the snow wouldn't be blue.
Yeah.
Try to get the snow a little more neutral. The sky, I may tone it down a bit. It's a little watercolory, but not much. Just because I know in the morning you can get those amazing sunrises there too, if you get it early enough.
Yeah. And I think, looking at the snow to try to make it not so blue, I guess the best way to do is, go into an app that where you can just hone in on one color and maybe kind of desaturate that color a little bit, but then that would affect the sky too. So I guess it would depend on
I know
how
like
that
an
balances
app,
out.
Yeah, I know like an app like Polar, you can actually do like the foreground.
Yeah,
you can do like an automatic, and they have automatic selection where you can say, it'll say, "Oh, this is the ground," boom, and you can work on that separately from the sky.
Yeah, that's a pretty handy tool.
Yeah. Okay, so
now we got this one.
Yeah, that's it for the old one. So this was actually taken last week. And really this is the difference. The sky was that vibrant red. So this was a little after 5:00 local time. And it was just looking, due west. And the only really edit I did here was to, if you look at the bottom of the image, you see something that says right on it. This is actually the parking lot of the shopping center.
Oh yeah.
So I cut off a bunch of cars.
Oh yeah.
And maybe did a little editing with the aspect ratio. But other than that, I really didn't do anything else. So I tried to keep it as realistic and seeing what I saw in my eye, just because it was that it's one of those sunsets that you just look at and go, wow. And of course, if you wait 5 minutes, it's gone.
Oh yeah. Timing is everything when it comes to a sunrise.
That was just dumb luck.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just like it's just fiery orange, just
Mm-hmm.
really brilliant. And then you know what? The funny thing is as it goes up through the frame, about halfway, it stops. And there's just a
Yeah.
wee bit, a little hint of it. So, I mean, um,
Well, that when I mean sunset, local times for sunset is just around 5. So yeah,
yeah,
probably it was right after official sunset.
yeah, yeah,
So literally 5 minutes later, this was all gone.
yeah. That's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah, it
It
was
can
just,
happen that
and
fast.
that's one of the great things about the iPhone is that I see something, I go, oh my God, that's amazing. I want to take a picture. I pull it out, I swipe, I take the picture.
Yeah,
I don't have to say, oh, I have to run to the car. I have to get this, make sure my battery's good on my camera, make sure I have the right lens, get that situated. You know, I'm not saying that if I didn't have a full SLR with the lens and everything, and that it wouldn't turn out better. I'm sure it would, but I would probably miss the image.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, but you know, that's the nice thing about iPhoneography is
Mm-hmm.
it's always with you.
Very true. Very true. And the
Yeah.
last image here is actually this morning. I just noticed that we had a blue sky, full moon out in the morning, and I tried to take a couple pictures. This is actually at my workplace, and I tried to take a couple pictures when I was about to leave my house, or right after I left my house. I had to make a quick stop on the way in, and it was just one of those weird things. I tried to take the picture. I tried to zoom in on the moon, and it was just a blurry blob.
Yeah.
And the moon is a hard thing to take. And I was hoping that, well, you know, it's bright, so you're not having like the dark night sky, so the contrast isn't as bad. And it was just a kind of literally a blob, you
Yeah.
know. So I said, okay, you know what? I got to go to work, get in the car, drive to work. It's a 30-minute drive for me one way. Got to work, got out of my car, looked and said, okay, I love the trees in the foreground because there's a couple trees. There's one tree with like reddish brown leaves still on it. The rest of them have already lost their leaves, and they had the nice kind of clouds right on the horizon there, and the
Hmm.
moon up there. And I said, okay, I'm going to try and see if I can get that. And I don't know why, but this just turned out so much clearer because you can actually see. And I tried to do some edits on here to really try to see if I can get a little clear shot, not of the moon, but try to get a little more detail.
Right.
And this was with the 1X lens. So this is
Oh yeah.
without zooming in. Like I
And
said, the
that's
only,
the best lens you got on the
yeah,
phone, really.
exactly. Exactly. And you can still see like part of the craters on the moon here. I mean, it's not like
Yeah.
I've seen some, and I give credit where credit's due. Some Samsung photos, some Huawei photos,
Yeah.
and a couple pixel photos. The newest of the news that
Hmm.
zoom in on the moon, and you're like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's like
Yeah.
that's like because I still can't get close even because the best you can do with the new phone is 15x digital zoom and the
Yeah.
3x optical, which still that's not enough for the moon still.
Oh no, no.
I mean, I did take a
I
couple
don't
pictures
know.
where I zoomed in and the moon looked pretty good, but it still wasn't
Yeah,
what
I
I
don't know
wanted
when
to get.
Apple's gonna get it together and give us a heck of a good zoom like that. Maybe next year. I don't know, but I mean, everybody was expecting one this year, and they did
Yeah,
come through. So,
I'm
um,
thinking. I'm thinking either like I said, they need every year that for photography they need a wow thing. I was kind of hoping
yeah,
this year would be astrophotography, but
yeah.
you know what? I could see
Well,
next
and
year or year after with the
for
periscope zoom.
yeah, but for astrophotography, it is pretty good
Yeah.
this year, um, with the 13 Pro Max or
Mm-hmm.
13 Pro even. And I mean, Shane Moston is
Oh yeah.
um, living proof of that. The stuff he's doing is amazing,
Yeah.
and because he is a bloody legend,
Very true.
and uh, but you're limited to a wide view of the sky. It's
Right.
great for if you can get um, the Milky Way in there at the right time of year and all that stuff. It's good for the Milky Way shot with something of interest in the foreground, things like
Mhm.
that. But to get a closer look at the sky or the moon, that would be ideal, and it's just not happening yet. So,
Yeah.
oh, maybe one day. So those are yours. That was six pictures. So I picked six to go here too. And now these are the first three were from 2012, I think, if memory serves me. And the last three were from the last couple of years. I know there's one there with my 10s Max, and I think two with my 12 Pro Max. So let me do this. There, you should be able to see that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The coffee cup picture.
Yeah. So this was now, yeah, this isn't a great big one either. I thought it was bigger than that, but yeah. So this was back in the day with my 4S, I believe it was, and I used Snapseed to do the edit, and I focused on the front rim of the cup. It's just a coffee cup sitting on a plate with a spoon. It was at a restaurant with black coffee in it, white cup, like a beige colored tablecloth and whatnot. And I just wanted to make it look like give it some like depth of field, like a shallow depth of field.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that with Snapseed. And the back then it was the typical saturation and things like that people were doing, and I did that with it as well. And I don't know, it just fit better in a square crop. I did a lot of square cropping back then because that was probably, if I look on I can't see if it's on there or not, but I have
Well, say how many years ago was
yes,
that
it
again,
is.
Greg?
9 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Well, at
So
that time, Instagram only had square.
that's right. You are correct.
That's what I was wondering, because it has not been. It's been a while since they switched over, but early on, you were stuck with square.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I have a poster, like it's on uh, like like a board, and I got my 2012 year that I did a picture a day, and that this one is on there, because I can see it now. But hang on. You gotta love the mute button, the cough button. So yeah, so I mean, I did a lot of square cropping back then, just because of Instagram, and of course, like I said, I was doing a picture a day, taking, editing, and posting for all of 2012. And stupid me, it had to be a leap year, so it was 366 days worth of this stuff. And so Snapseed, it was probably that was back when it was a paid app as well. I don't believe Google owned it back then, and I bought it, and I was using it quite a bit for these things, and so that was basically how it started for me. Fancy filters and all this stuff, and so this next one, it looks blurry, but it's because I use like the what do they call it in Snapseed, the glamour glow. And these are orchids in our living room. We have a dark reddish colored wall in the background, and these are just lit by the lamp. And the 4S, not great for low light photography, but I was able to pick up the petals in that are white, and the center of the flowers is like a pinkish color, or at least it looks that way. Maybe it was just because of all the red walls and stuff, and I'm going to guess that I probably gave this a little bit of a vignette, but I'm not sure because the top left corner isn't really dark. Maybe it's just the way it was lit by the lamp. But, again, square crop, heavily filtered and all that stuff. And and just another Snapseed edit. So that's how my year went for 2012.
Well, Greg, I can let you know. I was just looking, and it was in September 2015 that Instagram allowed non-square photos.
Wow. So they went true square for a few years then.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's interesting. So this one is an upright piano that was at my parents' place, and it was a light colored piano. I don't want to say it was pure white, but I just took a picture looking down the keyboard on it, or like the keys with the black and white keys, and with the white colored paint on the wood. I thought this looked really good in a not quite a black and white, but it was kind of like a sepia tone, and it definitely has a vignette on it. And vignetting is, to this day, one of my favorite things to do in an edit. I certainly don't do it as harsh now as I did back then, but it's the square crop just really worked well with the perspective and the leading lines from the where the lid's flipped up, and the hinge, and then the keys, and then the front of the keys and everything else. It all goes to the top left-hand corner. So
I think a lot of people who did a lot of sharing on Instagram almost started to think in terms of a square format.
Oh yeah.
In terms of
for their shooting,
for the shooting, yeah. And also for that first photo of the coffee cup, having a border.
Yes.
Because I think early on, everyone was putting a border because they wanted to, like I said, literally it was Instagram is the new Polaroid. So
exactly.
just like Polaroid had the white border going around, you wanted a border on your photo, or even if you and for those of us who are listening, who are even a little younger than both of us, look at your parents' or grandparents' photos from like the 60s and 70s, where all the photos have a border on them almost.
Oh yeah.
That's how it was processed. You had a white border. And I think that was more of a limitation of the technology. So,
well, I mean, it was a guarantee that you're going to get the whole photo on the sheet too, right? In the print. Right. It's not going to be like when you do a photo that's borderless, you don't know if you're getting the whole thing or not, right?
Yeah.
So that's a good point though, about the borders and stuff like that. I never thought of that part of it, but yeah. So now fast forward to 2019 for this one. One of my favorite pictures. This is a river that's just downstream from a waterfall in town here, or just outside of town, I guess here. And the unedited version is not nearly as brilliant and not nearly as saturated. I used slow shutter cam for this, and I focused on the rock right in the center, and just made sure that when I adjusted the exposure, I didn't have any of the water blowing out, and then the rest was just dealt with in post, or in I'm trying to think. I think I might have done this in Polar. I boosted the saturation to get the foliage. It was actually raining at the time, not hard, but it was drizzling rain.
Wow.
So
you
the
can't
leaves in
that
that
at all.
No. But the leaves in that were already kind of saturated with color, but just not enough for my liking. So I actually boosted the saturation and a little bit of vibrance maybe. And other than that, I don't think there's any color correction done to this. My editing style now, and that would include back in 2019, is more like enhancing. Just maybe sharpening just a little wee bit, just minor moves on just about everything. And even the vignette on this is not as pronounced as it was on the piano shot that we just looked at. It is a slight vignette around the edges, but that's to help draw your eyes to the center of the photo, which is the river and the rocks and stuff. So, that's how my editing has evolved. It's gone from going all out crazy to just subtly changing it and just enhancing it a little better. So, and I've also, as everybody knows, gone really hard on macro photography. I'm on the last chapter of the book, Dave. So soon, hopefully soon, I'll have it finished. But I do have to go through it all again and make sure I didn't miss anything. And could check for spelling mistakes and all that stuff.
Oh,
but
yeah.
anyway, but I mean, macro is one of the last picture you saw of the river, like the slow shutter picture, the long exposure, and macro. Those are my two favorite things to do. And this is a wasp that was on a leaf on our Rose of Sharon bush in the backyard. And I used my moment macro to get this. Okay. Don't ask me how he never stung me, but he let me take about a dozen or so pictures of him before. Wow. I think it's a him before he kind of flew away. And I, of course, with the moment macro lens, you've got to be within an inch to get a shot like this.
I mean, you can see the I'll call them hairs.
Yeah.
Top of the head. I don't know what the technical term is, if you know, but I mean the detail and how close it is, including on especially the its left front leg, where you can actually see the full detail of the skin, or again, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I know what you mean.
But yeah. it is just wow.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite macros. Of course, I was trying to get the eyes in sharp focus, right? So that's why you can see the I'll call it hair too, for lack of better knowledge here, but the hair around on the top of the head and around the side of the eyes, and that it's all fairly clear. But as far as editing this photo goes, I suspect I did a little bit of crop, just to position the wasp where I wanted it. So basically, I got the face kind of close to the top right third, where the third lines would intersect, going by the rule of thirds there. And other than that, I think there may be a little bit of saturation, maybe a bit of contrast, and maybe I'm going to guess maybe a little bit of sharpening, but probably not very much, because I think you could tell if it was over sharpened or not.
Oh yeah.
And so I mean that was I'm going to see if I can't get this on the cover of this book I'm doing it, because it's one I really, really like. But again, go ahead.
I was saying, you can tell you did not oversaturate the colors. Because you can tell when colors oversaturate, they lose the gradient in the color, and you just get like solid yellow. Where here you can see there's different shades of yellow and different depths to the color, darkness to the color.
And this one too is my 10S Max. I should note that as well. So, but yeah, I was really, really pleased with this one. And, I don't know. There's not much else I could say about it. No vignetting on this one, but, just a really, cool experience to be that close to this little guy and have him not sting me. I've been stung by a wasp before, and it hurts. So I was really being careful not to, tick him off. So that's the wasp. Now this was not too long ago with my 12 Pro Max. This one is a 3-shot panorama. So I put the phone vertically, and I shot, the left side with a big overlap to shoot the middle, and then a big overlap to shoot the right-hand side, and all done with slow shutter cam. And I use slow shutter cam as opposed to even longer, because even longer, because I can get raw with it. You'd think that would be the way to go, But if I did that, I would have lost some of the detail in the clouds. It wouldn't have been able to process it as well as slow shutter cam just for that reason. So that's why I use slow shutter cam for this one. And really all I've done after I've got them all stitched together now, admittedly, I did the stitching on the desktop with Affinity Photo, because it has a panoramic merge type of thing.
Okay.
So that was the best way to do the panel that way. But as far as the editing goes, really all I did was maybe boost the saturation a wee bit, vibrance, maybe a little bit of contrast, but I didn't want to lose the detail on the upper portion of the rock. So for those that are listening, this is it's a waterfall, and in the waterfall's coming over in the center of the frame, and then to the left and to the right, it's almost like a horseshoe shaped gorge, but it's part of the Niagara Escarpment, and you can see the layers of the rock. Down near the bottom, you can see clay, and then partway up, it turns into like a grayish colored rock, and then there's different layers to the rocks here. It's a really cool place. This is called Indian Falls, and it's just outside. Excuse me, it's just outside of town here, and the color of the water falling over the edge was yellow like that. I suspect it's because it's probably iron deposits, in the river or something maybe. But it's it was in the fall, not a lot of brilliant color, but you can see some green, some of the leaves are just starting to turn yellow in that one tree up in the upper left, but a lot of evergreens throughout here too. But if I had saturated this more, I think it would have looked a little overdone, right? So I think because of the file size I have for this, I'm tempted to get this done in a really large print just to see what it looks like. Just haven't got the nerve up to do it yet.
Well, and also you can see in the rocks, just behind the waterfall, it has that yellow color to it also.
Yeah.
So that may, like you said, the yellow color, I think, like you said about from the actual rock or from the sediment itself.
Mm-hmm. Now, something that was brought to my attention when I had posted this online was the left side wasn't as crisp and clear as the right side. So the left side of the frame, where the rock face is, it looks just a little like not as tack sharp as the right side. And after looking at video footage I took of the waterfalls, it's because of the mist. The breeze was blowing right to left through the frame, and there was a mist on that side of the frame that caused that to look a little less sharp. If I wanted to, I may have been able to use like a clarity or something like that to to sharpen that up a little bit, but I didn't want to take a chance at going overboard with that either. So I just left it as it was. But so that's, again, subtle changes to the original image, just to kind of make it look a little more, pleasing to the eye, and probably a little more to what it looked like to me when I saw it. That's kind of like what you said too. You want to, make it look a little more like what you saw it, or even throw that artistic approach to it. So, the only thing that kind of annoys me about this is in the bottom center. It looks like there's maybe some trash down there, but I really wanted to, I could get that taken out with touch retouch. But so there we have it. There's our I think that's the last one. Yep. So there's our how it started and how it's going thing with editing and our approach to editing. So now, Dave, do you think the difference in the phones has changed our approach to editing, or do you think it's just, we tried something and, now we're moving on to different things? Like, what do you think has been the deciding factor with making that change?
I I think it's less of the phone in for most shots. Yeah, for well lit shots where there's not a lot of difference between, let's say, a 6, a 10, and a 13, and taking like a well lit outdoor shot without
Hmm.
much movement. They're going to take good photos. So the fact that I'm not as trying to overboost, and a lot of that's just taking photos and editing over time. Just a matter
Hmm.
of, here's something, like I said, for a lot of people, including especially me, um, the first time I actually had a chance to do photo editing was actually pre-iPhone. It was on a Mac I had, where the photos, or whatever they called it back then,
iPhoto, yep.
iPhoto had some really good editing techniques where basically some things you can do now in photo where you can boost it and get the contrast and sharpness and clarity.
Yeah.
But that was the first time I actually ever edited a photo, because before they were I didn't take that many digital photos, and I was not one to develop my own photos. I didn't have a 35 millimeter growing up. I had
Yeah.
disc 110, where you take a photo, you give it to the little person who lives in the little shack in the middle of the parking
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah, that's right.
and then like 4 to 7 days later, you drove back to the little person and they gave you your photos. And it was, if you did photo editing, you needed if you could get even a hold of something to do photo editing, the average person couldn't do it.
Oh no, no. Editing software back then was like,
Yeah.
oh,
If you can get a
hundreds of
computer that could
dollars.
handle it, even if you can get a computer that could handle it, because
Yeah.
the average computer probably couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or let's say when I was taking photos on the 110 and this, we're talking 80s. So there
Hmm.
was no, I was a teenager. I didn't have access. I mean, I didn't get my first computer till it was a Commodore 64.
Oh yeah.
So there was no way to get that photo into, you know, there were two ways to get information in that Commodore: a 5 1/4 inch floppy that literally was floppy, you know,
Yeah. And
or
what was the capacity of that? Like kilobytes,
three,
right? It was like
yeah,
a
300,
mere.
300 kilobytes, I think, 360 for the regular and 720 for the high capacity. And you had to
Wow.
flip it. Yeah. And you had to have multiple floppies for programs, or for the Commodore, a cassette player,
Yeah, that's right.
which
Yeah,
I
everything
didn't
was on
have because
cassette.
that was a lot. That was pretty expensive. So, the fact that, it's like, and you actually worked on that on a TV, a CRT TV. It didn't come with a
Yeah.
monitor like a Mac or something else. So you're limited on editing. So the fact when I think this is true for a lot of people, I would say, and this is something keep in mind with Apple. Apple goes for 90% of the people, 90% of what you do.
Yeah.
So for most people, the first time you've ever edited a photo was on your phone. Most people, even when they actually had editing software that wasn't too expensive available on a computer, and the thing to remember is most people still use Windows. And photo editing for Windows that's easily gotten and cheap, outside of, oh, I have this Canon or I have this Nikon, and it comes with software from the photo manufacturer, which is still not geared towards the average person, other than, oh, you can take a photo and put on a button, or but in terms of editing, what we can do on our phones or iPad or tablets, it's not even close. And the
Yeah.
first
Yeah.
time I think people had I have a serious that I can do edits and change and do tones and do this and do that without someone having Photoshop or Lightroom, which is over a lot of people's heads because that's not easy software to learn, was on the phone. Like I said, Snapseed, like especially when it went free. Snapseed, even some of the built-in stuff like Camera Plus 2 has built-in photo editing. Without even going to like Darkroom or some other, especially, Polar, where you can do heavy editing, really serious editing there, but it's accessible for the average person to even bring in there and even hit that auto button, even though I'm not a big fan of the auto button, but at least the auto button, see what it can do, and you can slide easily and make some changes. So a lot of people are like, oh, wow, I can do all this edit. Watch me do all these edits. Oh, the slider can go all the way to negative 100 or all the way to positive 100. And now it's like, I don't need to go all the way there.
Yeah, that's right.
It made some amazing images, but I really don't need to go to negative 100.
Yeah, and I encourage people to do that though, just to see what the slider does, right?
Yeah,
and then
you may even like how it turns out.
It looks the best. Yeah,
you may like the way it turns out, but it may be also a little bit of, I've been working with this for a couple of years, or even like the built-in Photos app now. You can do a lot more than you could in the past. Yeah. Where it's like, I have vibrance, I have saturation, two separate things. Let me try what the difference is. I can do tint. I can do this. I can do this. There's basically a definition now with the built-in photos, which is it's kind of like clarity. So it's like, that's not just sharpening, but that's doing more than that. So
it's kind of adding a little bit of contrast. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, but a lot of people are like, this is new. And then you get used to it after a while. And you're like, okay, I don't have to do that. Or like I said, when we look back on the photos, like, that was, I overdrove it a lot. Like and I think the vignette on the piano is perfect. I think you need
it suits the image. Yeah.
For that image, you needed that, at least in my mind, you needed that heavy vignette. And it worked perfectly with the leading lines with the keys. But like you said, now you probably wouldn't put that heavy vignette on it now.
No. I think, as the phones get better, now this is just my own thinking now. I think the amount of editing that we do has decreased. I mean, I'll speak for myself, my own experience, because I just don't think that, I think the exposure latitude of these newer phones is just somehow almost perfect every time. Like when I take a shot, I tend to use the histogram, like in halide, and you can see on the histogram, it might just start. I'm trying to get this in the screen here. Just start on the shadow side, and to be up around like this, whatever, and then it'll just end where the highlights are, and I try to think, okay, do I need to adjust the exposure any to make this, any better? And usually it's no. I shoot in auto just about all the time. And if I do anything to the exposure, it'll be maybe a contrast adjustment where it really won't touch the ends. But it will adjust the brightness and the darkness and all that stuff throughout the image without, overblowing or losing the shadow detail. So I think the phones, the better they get, I think that the easier it is on the editing part of it. But I think too that editing is part of, like, it's an art form in itself, right? I mean, we've seen that throughout the years of iPhone photography or even smartphone photography. We've seen it on Instagram. And when I look at my 2012 poster, I see how it started for me and I see how it is now. And I've developed a style of my own where I can look through, say, the last year's worth of my Instagram feed, and you could almost tell that that's a picture that I took just without even looking at who took it.
Mm-hmm.
You could, if you're familiar with my pictures, right? Because there's okay, so the one person that comes to my mind is Kimberly Trefser, and she's on Instagram, and it's Kim's Captures, and I think that's her Instagram handle, and she has a very specific way of editing. And as soon as I see a picture that she put on there, I can almost guarantee I know whose it is without looking at it, because she does almost the same thing to everyone. There's another one. Um, I believe it's HD underscore Alley. It's a lady who lives in Ontario here in Canada. She does a very dark, moody edit to her images, and I would love to have her on the show to talk about those, because she does her whole feed is the same style of editing, and it's more than what I would probably do, but I have been inspired by her editing to the point where I've done, really tone down the color or not the color per se, but the exposure to have more blacks in the frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just to give it that dark, moody look. And I think people develop their style over time in their editing, in their shooting too. But I mean, because some people, some people's style is street or landscape or whatever, right? But there's some people who have made their style through their editing, and I think that's a really cool thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's an art form in itself, and if I was to give any advice to people out there just starting to get into it, just play around with different things, find a favorite app, and work on that style and see what you get. So. That's about all I can say about editing.
Yep.
So, so real quick, I just wanted to address an idea that I've come up with, Dave. And I think if I find the right place to do this, we can have coffee cups of our own.
Oh.
So what I'm thinking is, getting some merchandise to help, pay for the channel and stuff like that. And, we can get stuff with, say, the podcast logo, and then, maybe have some with your picture on it. Maybe have some with my picture on it. We can get some with David Addison stuff on it, because his show was part of the network.
Oh, yeah.
And we can get t-shirts and all that stuff. Something that I'd really like to do, stickers even, and see if we can't help get ourselves out there with a little bit of merchandise.
Oh, yeah.
And see what happens. What I'd love to do is I'd love to find an artist who could do caricatures.
Okay, I was going to say, yeah.
That would be so cool to have caricatures of ourselves. I looked for an app that could do it, but I couldn't find one that was good enough. So if anybody knows of any apps out there that can turn a photo into a caricature,
no, I don't know if you're familiar with this Viola AI artist. I haven't tried it, but there is, it does, I don't know if you want to try it, it is free, but you can do like 3D cartoons, 2D cartoons, caricatures.
Oh, yeah. Oh, really? Okay. All right. I'll look that up and give it a whirl yourself and see what you come up with. And who knows, maybe we'll have some kind of funny caricatures that we can add to, on the mug or something like that. But that's just an idea that I've been kind of toying around with for a while now. And I think after 50 episodes, why not? You know?
Oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, anything else you want to add, Dave?
No, I think we're good for the night.
All righty. Sounds good. So let's let everybody know where they can find you.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter as Prof Pod, and you can find me on Instagram as Dave Podner Jr.
All righty. And you can find me on, my microphone's way up here now. I bumped it, so I had to move it. But you can find me on Instagram, McMillan Photo, Twitter, McMillan_photo. And just about all my other stuff you can find all in one place at about.me/McMillan. We do the podcast about every 2 weeks, as long as nothing gets in the way. And, it lives on, actually it lives in a couple of different places. One, it lives on the website, iPhoneography.ca. And the podcast feed comes from anchor.fm/iPhoneography. I think that's what it is. I'll put it down below to make sure I get it right. And it'll be in the show notes as well. And don't forget to check out the David Addison show. He's not on a schedule. I just let him do it whenever he can get around to it. But I'm also going to put a link to his latest YouTube video where he talks about cinematic mode in the new iPhone 13 Pros. So check that out. It's a really good one. And I guess that's it. Our next show will be on, I think, the 6th of December. So after that, I'm not sure how close we are running into Christmas. So maybe it may not be till after Christmas, but
no, after that, we're on the 20th.
Okay.
Yeah, well, Christmas is on a Saturday, so
yeah,
it will be.
So things, this time of year, people kind of get busy and whatnot. So if we miss a show for the 20th, well, that'll be why. But I think we should be all right.
Oh yeah.
And So check out the YouTube channel for those who are listening. And if you can't check out the YouTube channel to see the images that we've put up tonight, you will be able to see them on your device looking at the podcast app. I've found a way to put out an enhanced version of the show where whatever we're talking about, I'll try to have it so that it pops up on the screen for you to have a look at. So I've tried that the last couple of episodes and it's worked out pretty good. So, so I guess we'll see you all in the next one. Have a good night.
Have a great one, everyone.